If you're a health of a life coach and you've been finding it hard to sell your one-to-one coaching, then today we're going to be talking all about how you can use something called sales cycles to help you get more clients. Let's dive in. Hi there, welcome to the Wholehearted Business Show. I'm Laura. I help health and life coaches get more clients, grow their businesses, and live the best lives while they do it. And today on the show, we're talking all about sales cycles and what they are and how you can utilize them in your health or life coaching business to help attract more clients into your coaching business. So, what on earth is a sales cycle? A sales cycle is a very specific way of, or a specific period when you are driving sales towards your offers. In this case, we're going to be talking more specifically about one-to-one coaching, and I'm going to talk a bit about why this can be helpful. The problem that a lot of us have with our one-to-one coaching is that it kind of just exists and sits there on our website, and we don't really do anything that actively is selling that coaching package. I'm going to talk about the difference between active and passive selling in a second, but it just kind of sits there. And once your business gets to a certain point and you are getting spontaneous client inquiries, I've talked about this before, I'm going to link to the episode of the show where I talk all about spontaneous client inquiries, then that's fine. And often, you will get clients and it's all good. But sometimes that is not enough, and it's not enough just to have your coaching package kind of sat there. It can also just be quite difficult to be selling the same thing continuously over and over again without any kind of key things to organize that selling around. And when we have sales cycles, it gives us something to organize that selling around. It also means that we don't feel like we're constantly in like the hustle selling mode. And there's different, again, we're going to talk about the active and passive ways that we can approach selling in a second. If any of this is interesting to you, I'd love for you to go and check out one of my programs called the Launch and Sales Fix. I delivered this program live back in August and it's available there. I'm going to put it on a little special offer. So do go and check that out. If the whole kind of concept of selling and launching and basically getting people to actually become clients and actually buy your stuff is challenging and it's something that you want to work on in 2025, then please do go and check out that program. I cover so many fantastic bits and pieces, strategies, like really great stuff in that. So do go and check that out. So as I've said, one-to-one coaching can be tricky to sell because usually it's a higher ticket price. We generally just have it there on our website, just kind of sitting there doing our thing. We maybe send some traffic to that page through maybe some emails, maybe like an email welcome sequence. We maybe kind of like send people from Instagram there, but basically it kind of just sits there. And that can make it actually quite hard to sell. And like I say, we want to get to that point where we're getting those spontaneous client inquiries. But until that point comes, and until perhaps you have other offers in your business that strategically all work together and make sense, we want to be doing something that is going to help you sell your one-to-one coaching. And that is where the sales cycles come in. So a sales cycle, as I kind of mentioned before, but just to expand on that, is when you create specific periods of time in your business when you actively sell your one-to-one coaching package. And usually what that looks like is utilizing two key levers kind of in your strategy, which is urgency or scarcity. Now, those things can sound a bit scary, and we're going to talk about that in a bit more detail. But ultimately, a sales cycle is something that is done over a specific period of time, and it utilizes urgency and scarcity because they give people a reason to get off the backsides and actually move. Now, this is not, sales cycles are not going to help you if your offers are not right, if your marketing sucks, if people don't know that you exist. But if you have people in your audience and that you've kind of built that relationship with them and you've connected with them, but for some reason, and you know that your offer's good, you've kind of confident in your offer, then this could be the missing piece and it could really, really help increase your results and help you book more clients. So sales cycles are ultimately about planning out specific times when you are going to actively sell versus passively selling. So what is active selling and what is passive selling? Now, I think it's really helpful to think about what you do around sales in these two different ways, because for me, it really helped me see like where and why I wasn't getting the results that I wanted to get because of the way that I was selling. So passive selling is kind of like the stuff that you just have on autopilot where you're not kind of having to put a massive effort into it. So I'm thinking things like you might have a welcome sequence that invites people to sign up for a discovery call or that points them towards your one-to-one coaching offer on your website. You might mention it occasionally, like that you've got a coaching offer on Instagram. You might go to some networking events and mention to people that you've got a coaching package and that you're a coach. Like that is all quite passive. There's no kind of particular urgency about any of that, and that's fine, and that is sometimes like perfectly okay. So I'm not saying that that is wrong, and we always want to have like that passive selling going on. And for me, passive selling is like the foundation that you want always happening in your business. You always want to be passively selling your coaching offer, your other offers, whatever it is. You always want to be passively selling that stuff within your content. Like, I've just talked about the launch and sales fix. That's very much a passive bit of sales. Like I'm not, I've got a special offer, but it's not really time limited right now. I'm very casual about it, passive selling. And then we've got the more active selling. And this is when you are showing up in a different way and you are actively selling. And that might look like using scarcity and urgency. It might look like reaching out to people. It might look like creating specific content that is around driving sales. It's like a part of it is a bit of a mindset as well as a strategy. But hopefully that makes sense in terms of what is passive and what is active. And active selling is a much more, I'm actually having to do this right now. When you are actively selling, I think it makes much more sense to do so in these sales cycles because it can feel a little bit exhausting after a certain period of time and it just loses its impact. If you are basically like actively selling continuously to the same bunch of people, you might do it to different bunches of people and that's fine. So for me, I think this makes a lot of sense in terms of how you approach selling and promoting your coaching package to your potential clients. So like I said, a sales cycle will tend to use urgency or scarcity to help get people to move. Now, there's been a lot of chat about how people feel about using urgency and scarcity in their business. And just to give you some examples of what urgency and scarcity is, some urgency might be a bonus that disappears. It might be a price increase. Basically it's something that gives people a reason to act upon it now. That's your urgency. Your scarcity might be, I only have this number of slots available. This is going to disappear. I'm going to retire this thing. It's not going to be available anymore. I'm sure everyone listening and watching this will be familiar with because these are common practices that people use to drive sales. We give people a reason to move. And sometimes when we've got a bigger coaching package that is just sitting there is no real urgency or scarcity for anyone to engage with that. And sometimes adding a little bit of urgency and scarcity just gives people that little nudge that they need to take action. Now, I think there's better ways of using scarcity and urgency and less better ways of using it. And usually that comes down to your own authenticity and making sure that you are not creating false urgency or scarcity. So the way that I like to approach urgency and scarcity is like if I legitimately only have a couple of slots left of my coaching package that I can, really realistically manage that amount of clients, then that is realistic scarcity. And I'm going to share the fact that I've only got 2 spaces left in my one-to-one coaching package. That's fine. If I need to close the doors to something because I can't be continuously selling this thing, that to me is genuine scarcity. Like when I open and close Wholehearted Business, the group program, which will be opening in March, that doesn't feel disingenuous to me because I literally open the doors, sell it, and then close it. Because if I was continuously selling, it would not feel energetically aligned for me. So that's why I have that open. Again, some people talk about having evergreen sales where, programs and packages are open all the time. And, one of the things that does make that work is when you can tap on people's internal urgency. So another thing that you can always remember is what do you need to say to people? What do you need to highlight in your messaging that is going to tap into someone's own internal urgency or scarcity? And sometimes that can be a different kind of way of looking at things. But generally speaking, these kind of levers that we can pull when it comes to our sales, they can make sense. And as long as you feel good about using them, then there's no reason why you shouldn't. So for example, with a one-to-one coaching package, it can be, let's say that you look at your calendar for 2025 and you think, right, okay, so in January, I'm going to have a sales cycle that is focused around selling my one-to-one coaching offer. And the levers I'm going to use to pull on this and to kind of make it a set cycle of time, set period of time, and not just an ongoing thing, is I'm going to have a discount on it. and the discount is going to end on the 31st of January. And I'm going to organise my promotion of that and my selling around that date. And that would be a sales cycle. This is also where we kind of get into launches and mini launches, which again is something I cover in way more detail in the Launch and Sales Fix. But this is kind of like all these things kind of interplay, and you don't have to see them all as the same thing. Like I think having a sales cycle around your one-to-one coaching offer is different to having a launch or a mini launch. I think the differences depend on what it is that you're utilising in that picture. It might be that if you are doing a launch that you include some kind of conversion event. So a conversion event would be something like a challenge or a webinar or some kind of like live online event over a few days where you're offering training. Like there's all sorts of different versions of that. But that might be something that you include in a bigger launch. It could be something that you include just as part of a sales cycle as well. And there's all these different things that you can tie in that are going to help you get better results and ultimately get more clients and convert more people into customers. So when it comes to actually putting this into practice and thinking about how you put sales cycles into practice, it can be as simple as looking at your calendar. And again, I mentioned last week on the show, we had our 2025 plan along episode, and I talked about sales cycles because we've got a little section in the planning document, in the planning workbook, that is all about sales cycles. And it might be that you look ahead to 2025 and you kind of map out the specific times when you are going to actively sell. And again, you always want to be passively selling something like on a continuous passive basis all of the time. But what might be helpful for you is that you include in these sales cycles where you are actively selling at certain points in the year. So it's definitely worth having a bit of a think about what this might look like. And like I say, looking into 2025, it could be about just looking at, okay, so these are the things that I'm selling, these are the offers that I have, and this is when I'm going to do them, basically, looking at the calendar. What I think is really, really good is to look at your sales cycles seasonally. I talked again in an episode of the show that I've done recently about selling in December, about how, really attaching something to the seasons and using that as a reason, using that almost as that urgency and scarcity can be really, really beneficial. So, if you're a health coach, it could be that there's something very specific about January. Maybe it's about helping people, actually get a head start on all their New Year's resolutions. Then that could be a really, really great thing to tap into and use that for people's own internal urgency. So it's just about basically looking at the few months that you've got coming up in your business and deciding, this is what I'm going to do to actively sell. These are the levers I might want to use in terms of urgency and scarcity. This is the period of time. This is like the date at which the urgency and scarcity kind of disappears. And this is how I'm going to actively sell. So when you talk about active selling, it is like, what does that active selling look like? Is it doing a conversion event, like a webinar or a challenge? Is it actually reaching out to people and, looking at your hot leads, which again is something that I cover in the Launch and Sales Fix? What is it about those periods? How are you going to actively sell in those periods versus the passive selling that ideally you should be doing all of the time? So I really hope that that's given you some food for thought going into 2025 about the ways that you might want to think about how you sell your coaching offer. And like I say, this is particularly relevant, I think, for one-to-one coaching, because generally speaking, most coaches just have a coaching offer that kind of sits there and doesn't really do anything. So it can really, really help get people off the fence if perhaps they've not been sure whether or not now's the right time. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get clients at any other time of year. It just means that you're giving people a reason to maybe move now. And again, with all of this stuff and anything that I ever share, just do that internal alignment check-in. Like, does this kind of feel right to me? Is this what I want to do? And if it does, then give it a go. Let me know how it goes. But I really love sales cycles. It helps me stay organised around my business. I can work it in around my life. I can work it in around the fact that I take most of the summer off with my kids. I take most of December off. It kind of can flow around those other things. And I always know that I've got something that I'm going to do that is going to really actively sell the things that I offer. As always, guys, I really, really hope that this has been helpful. And again, if any of this is resonating with you, next week's episode of the show is all around your coaching business model. Now, this is going to be quite an exciting one. I'm really, really, excited to get stuck into this, because when we have a better understanding of some of this like fundamental stuff around our businesses, it can help us do things differently. It can help us show up in a different way. It can help us be more profitable, all of that good stuff. So do look out for that episode of the show coming soon. If you're watching on YouTube, please do give me a like and subscribe. It's always really, really helpful for me and helpful in me growing my channel. And do leave a comment as well. That would be so helpful. I really want to grow my YouTube channel even more in 2025, so that would be super useful. And yeah, I really hope that you've enjoyed this episode of the show, and I will see you next week. Take care. Bye.